All right. Once again, welcome everyone to session 4 of our 5-part World Forum Capacity Strengthening Training Theory. And today's topic is emerging trends. And I would first like to just introduce myself for people that may not know who I am. My name is Olivia Clayson, and I work here at the World Federation Against Drugs. Today, we are very excited to have you all here to join us, and also very excited to have such excellent speakers today that will lead the session on emerging trends. But before we begin, I would like to share some practical information. Today's session will be 1.5 hours long, and we will have 3 speakers. After each presentation, there will be a time for questions from the audience, but you're welcome to type your questions in the chat throughout the session, and we will make sure to raise them after each presentation. Over the past sessions, we have explored several important dimensions of prevention, youth engagement, treatment and recovery-oriented care. We have also discussed how prevention must be gender and trauma sensitive, and how young people need to be meaningfully engaged as well, and also how treatment and recovery responses must be around dignity, compassion, and community support. But today, as I said, we turn to another essential and important topic of emerging trends. This is a topic that reminds us that prevention and treatment and recovery work cannot remain static. Patterns of substance use are changing, new substances and risks are appearing, and as well as behavior addictions, including gambling and online behaviors, are becoming increasingly visible in many contexts. At the same time, these trends do not affect everyone equally. Young people, marginalized communities, displaced populations, and people already facing social and economic vulnerability may be particularly exposed to emerging risk, while also having the least access to information, prevention, and treatment and support. So today's session is therefore not only about identifying what is changing, but it's also about asking how we can respond in practice. Myself, I ask questions like, how can emerging risk be recognized earlier? How can prevention, treatment, and support system adapt? And how can communities respond in ways that are timely, ethical, and grounded in lived realities? To guide these discussions, we are pleased to be joined by 3 speakers who bring valuable perspectives from different contexts, covering emerging trends, gambling addiction, and the influence of social media on young people's substance use disorder. But first, we will start with a presentation on emerging trends in Uganda and East Africa by Rogers Kasirye. And Rogers is Executive Director of Uganda Youth Development Link, and also the Vice President for Africa for the World Federation Against Drugs. He's an experienced NGO leader, and is also a recognized expert in youth development and public health in Sub-Saharan Africa, and has served as a technical consultant for both WHO, UNODC, and UNFPA. The floor is yours, Rogers.
Okay. Thank you so much, Olivia, for a nice introduction. But also, I'm excited that I'm being part of the people who will be discussing and sharing. And regards to Cressida for organizing this and other colleagues, but also for the members, that we can share our experiences and begin to see what we can do. I was requested that I share on emerging trends, and okay, let me pick my presentation here. Olivia, confirm if you can see it.
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I was requested that I share with you emerging addiction trends in Uganda, but also in East Africa. I think the idea was that what do we see here, and how can we prepare this for advocacy, for planning, and also for stakeholder dialogue. I think there's an element of dialogue, but also how we can prepare and share this. I'm particularly looking at the new psychoactive substances, which we see in Uganda, but also in East Africa. And what does it tell us in terms of advocacy work as program planning, but also stakeholder dialogue. Okay. This matters because addiction risks are moving from visible substances, the substances we know, the substances we are used to branded, and also seeing digital and synthetic partners which are beginning to emerge. As you can see, from Africa alone, WHO told us that 55 million people in Africa by 2025 were using, drugs. And when we begin to study what happens in my country in terms of synthetic drugs, when we did a knowledge, attitude, and practice survey, we saw 54% of our population were young people are using. And this was largely an urban respondent group, but also some bit of, but also we are able to see that apart from synthetic drugs, but also begin to see alcohol share is a big problem. Now, why does this matter? Because availability is increasing. You can also see normalization of these drugs. They are becoming normal, but also the digital pool which our system will be sharing, but weak services. And what do we see? That the most serious emerging drugs risks combine substance with behavior. I'm reading the second bullet. But also there is betting, which has come in, betting for soccer, betting for sports, the online peer influence, again, the nightlife, but also young people have a lot of trauma and the trauma, but also easy access. Now it is very easy to access some of these drugs. So the policy question, as we discuss as the World Federation Against Drugs and as members, the policy question is no longer only which drug, but which environment are we talking about? Which environments are we talking about? The platforms where these things occur, and the pathway which are exposing our young people, Now, I've been sharing about what we see in Africa from the UNODC material, where they estimated that an increase from 41 million in 2019, this is Africa alone, up to 55 million in 2025. So there is a growth. You can see the curves going up. And the interpretation here we see that growth is faster than the population growth. Africa is a young, basically continent, but they're telling us that the growth in substance use is exceeding population growth, signaling market expansion. Because if there is increase in consumption, increase in use, there is expansion, market expansion, and raising the issue of availability. However, we know that cannabis remains the dominant, but synthetic drugs and other pharmaceutical misuse are expanding in urban spaces. And East Africa, particularly in Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, DRC, Congo, and all that, we see also a high risk of heroin corridor, and emerging market for drug co-use and synthetic drugs. Now, I looked at a map. We are able to develop a map, and we are able to show you the type of drugs which are being used. And you can see the air routes, you can see the sea routes in the blue color, you can see the likely sea routes. And we are talking about tonnage, but as you can see, West Africa, we've got a lot of cocaine routes and seizure hotspots linked to European-bound flows in West Africa. But also when you look at East Africa, heroin corridor and movement linked to Asian markets. But also, for example, in Southern Africa, also when you come down at the bottom of the map of Africa, you can see a rising synthetic and stimulant drugs rates in urban markets. But also the map is showing us that Uganda is exposed through borders, transport corridors, refugee settings, and Kampala nightlife. All these are what are doors for use of drugs. Now, what we are talking about here is that prevention must target the roots. But also we need to raise awareness, and all these are very important key areas. Now, I want to take you to the next slide. We did a regional comparison on what we see, regional risk comparison in terms of substance markets And we notice that they are not uniform. Like I've said, in South Africa, we see a very high risk characterized by methamphetamines and synthetic drug expansion. In West Africa, we see a high cocaine trafficking and tramadol pharmaceutical misuse. In East Africa, we see a high heroin, urban drug markets and co-use. And then we do a North Africa, moderate, but cannabis production, export, and route linkage. Now, in terms of strategic meaning for Uganda, what do we see? We see drug trend must be monitored by geography. Geography is very important. Is it happening in rural area? Is it happening in urban area? Is it happening in border points? All these are very key because Kampala informal settlement, all these are revealing to us that the problem is actually expanding. You can see universities being mentioned, not spaces, high-risk occupations like fishing, the security guard, those working in high-risk mines, all those show us a regional what? A regional variation. Now, I want you also to look at the new psychoactive substances we see in Uganda, which are expanding. We did, like I said, we did a knowledge, attitude, and behavior survey, which was supported by the by American embassy, and we tried to see what do we see in our country. So we looked at 105 respondents. Of course, it was purposeful selected sample. But if you look at these small charts here, 88% were public health professionals who acknowledge the existence and risks. We've got a 54% respondents who reported ever using synthetic drugs, but also we have got 86 who reported adverse health effects among the users. But the commonly mentioned synthetic drugs, we saw the new psychoactive substances, tramadol and codeine, cough syrup, also saw morphine and other opioid-related medicine. But again, methamphetamine, ecstasy, MD and other stimulants were also in the social setting. We are very common in the social setting. Again, we have fentanyl and pethidine mentioned, though less common and requiring urgent surveillance. I think this was telling us that we require to do more surveillance. Now, when we go to the next slide, we are able to show you that this problem is more an urban-oriented problem. Urbans use a lot of synthetic drugs. We can see 57%. But when you look at the gender pattern, higher more among males. So what implication does this tell us? If we are going to do a lot of dialogue and discourse, we need to prioritize urban centers. We need to prioritize universities. We need to prioritize nightlife. We need to understand the peer networks and online channels. Now, peri-urban, much as the problem is not so much, but here we need to look at the transport sector. Like when we talk about border, we're talking about the motorcycle transport, which is very common in East Africa and Uganda. All these are very important. But for me, what is critical here is the program inside. Urban risk does not mean rural safety, because when you say the problem is more in urban, does not mean that rural areas are free and safe of synthetic drugs. It means the first wave detection is most viable in urban and peri-urban spaces. Therefore, we need to do more surveillance, sentinel violence surveillance model, linking schools, drop-in centers, pharmacies, health facilities, police, nightlife venues. All these are all these are very important. Olivia, you have to let me know if my time is gone. Okay.
Oh, you're okay. You're okay with time.
Okay. We also looked at pharmaceutical misuse, particularly looking at tramadol, codeine, and performance pressure. Here we are looking at prescription type medicine that can become very addictive when regulation and when people have pain, when people have stress, and informal network intersect. When these informal network intersect, you are likely to see an increase. And these are emerging because the pharmacy, why are these emerging? Is the pharmacy access. There are poor controls in pharmacy. Everybody can buy drugs and use them. Then the weak prescription controls in our country is very weak. Then the transport workers, number two, transport workers, the DJs, the night workers. This is where we are likely to see a lot of what? This is where we are likely to see a lot of stimulants. This is where we are likely to see a lot of stimulants and stay awake. And then number three, we see a lot of misuse, which is often invisible until dependence has done what? Has occurred. We see also emerging in accidents and violence. Now, The points here to take note of are, we need to regulate. We need to do more screening, but also do a what? Do a referral. Now, gambling is an issue here. I will not talk a lot about gambling because my other colleagues will be talking about gambling, but it's an issue which we need to look at. And my sister is going to share, but also this is here with quick money, small wins, reinforced betting. My sister is going to share on this. Now, also social media, my other sister is going to share. I'm going to skip, but what I've done that I've shared my presentation with Olivia and Cressida, they should be able to pass over both the PowerPoint, but also the text for this. Now, vaping, e-cigarette, which has low visibility, but high prevention priority. And what do we see? Young people may view vaping as fashionable. This is something to worry about. They see vaping as modern and less harmful. Products can be, saturated through online. Now, the prevention message here, which have come, is do not wait for high prevalence before. Colleagues in World Federation Against Drugs, we should not wait for high prevalence before acting. Let's protect schools. Let's integrate our messages in youth centers, even in the digital space. Let's train frontline workers. And I congratulate WFAD for beginning this, because we are beginning to open our eyes and our ears. And what can we say? We need to monitor online promotions and use misconception and be able to address what? To address them. Now, alcohol, we cannot forget alcohol. Uganda is one of the countries which really drink crazy. We drink, we have a lot of acute problems and chronic drinking. And this is something which needs to be addressed. It's also a serious problem in Africa. Implication here at the bottom of I'm saying that implication we don't need separate programs. If we can address alcohol, if we can address drugs, mental health, gambling, violence, all these will miss the reality of blended risk. In other words, we have a blended risk, we can do more and we can achieve more. Now, who and where these high-risk groups and such that? The young people, you can see number one, the youth, 15 to 35, where we see a lot of peer pressure, unemployment, incomplete development. Number two, the informal settlements are worthy to look at. People in transport, the transport workers who have a lot of stress, long hours, performance drugs, they need performance drugs. That's why synthetic drugs is emerging. But you can see number four, we are looking at women, we are looking at refugee. Number five, we are looking at students. But the locations are very important, where these communities and where these people stay. Now, consequences, mental health, youth development. This will affect youth development in terms of school dropouts, reduced skills, lost opportunities. Again, crime is coming up. Then sexual risk, coercion, transactional sex, intimate partner violence, and unsafer sex. All these are things to share and to tell our young people that these are likely to happen. Please don't touch, don't use drugs. And then the family system, but also the economy. The economy, our economies are going to be affected. You can see they are talking about low productivity. We are going to see debt and inform what? And inform what? Now, as I conclude, response framework. I designed a response framework here. And one of the things which I came up with was that in Uganda and East Africa, maybe in Asia, but also learning from other countries like Congo, we need to prevent early. Promote life skills, promote refusal skills, school clubs, parental engagement, but also screening is very important. Screening for these drugs, the audit, the suicide risk and the follow tools, the headaches, the crafts, all these are very important. Maybe in the future we can have sessions, Olivia or Cressida, more about how do we use some of these screening tools and how do we track. Then regulate exposure. We need to regulate exposure. Pharmacies, betting platforms, vaping products, selling to minors. Once we regulate this, then the risks are going to be very few. And then nightlife. Then treatment and integrate, brief interventions, counseling, family rehabilitation, and livelihood. And then coordinate. We need to coordinate. Border surveillance is very important. Early warning, research, training, exchange. But as an organization, what can be our contribution? We can share all this because we may not have to wait for WFAD to call a webinar. If you know a colleague in Nairobi who has done some work, you can invite them to speak to your colleagues at organizational level, in a platform level, and then we'll benefit. Then we can screen more, do peer education, do livelihood support. We do have a very strong component of livelihood support as an alternative to drugs, as an alternative for young people. We promote a lot of sports, and all these are very what? And all these are very important. Yeah, so Olivia, here we go. It seems I've done my presentation. Thank you so much for the time.
No, but thank you very much, Rogers. It was very insightful, and it's also, this is an important topic, and thank you for also sharing different types of emerging risks as well. I think we can, just to set up the discussion, we want to do a Slido question here for the audience, just to get the discussion started, which will be on the screen very soon. Let's see. Yes. And here you can just log in. You can go either to slido.com and then just put this code, or you can just also scan the QR code as well. And then, yeah, and then we will want to see what you have, what answers. So the question that we want to ask basically for the audience is, what emerging trends are you most concerned about in your context? Yeah. Let's give people some time, just a few minutes to see, to answer it basically. Okay, we are getting some responses. We see one of the responses is increased use among younger youth and students, and also again use among youth. Okay, emerging trends and concerns. Pharmacy, okay. Okay, but I think in the meantime, when people are also answering, I have a question for you, Rogers, as well. So do you have any tips of how organizations working with limited resources can monitor new risk in practical terms, and also in a low cost way without increasing any unnecessary fear or stigma? Do you have any tips for organizations?
Okay, thank you. I think many of us should be able to contribute. But if we want to monitor risks, we can do it at several levels. First of all, we are going to hear a lot from our sisters on digital, how digital is increasing, but also how we can use digital. The other way would be to use, there are tools which can help us to understand the usage, the daily exposure. In terms of daily exposure, we can ask a few questions from young people, whether at schools, whether in the community, daily exposure to alcohol, exposure to drugs, exposure to some of the new synthetic drugs. That would be very helpful, but of course it is so hidden. But I think hearing from the young people the daily exposure and the usage, and then the locations where it's happening, then that can inform our intervention, our advocacy intervention. I think this is well developed in alcohol by WHO, World Health Organization. The daily exposure, the environmental scans, and actually this help us to understand the commercial determinants to drugs, because commercial determinants are now becoming an increasing cause for use in terms of marketing, in terms of packaging, in terms of exposure, in terms of adverts. All this can be tracked. And once they are tracked, then we'll be able to develop a small paper or a sharing opportunity and tell our colleagues in enforcement, our colleagues in education and health, that this is what we see. I think that would be one way to do it. Learning from other areas, especially alcohol, learning from tobacco experience. How do we track? I think those would be very helpful. But also we could develop some questionnaire tools within our platforms, our networks, which we can spread in the urban centers and rural area, and then we'll be able to see some of those things. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think also touching a bit also as well on the on your last slide on your presentation, you talked about framework of screening. Which essential stakeholder do you think should be included in that framework?
Screening at center level, at school level is very important. Of course, I've recommended that tools we can use. Tools like HEDES, which understand the home, which understand the educational level, drug use, alcohol use, violence. But there are also others which have been recommended, like CRAFT, which apply CBT. But the others, like the audit, which normally screens for alcohol, which is 40% treatment. Once the young people are taken through this screening instrument, and the information is able to do, then it can tell even the trend, the emerging trends, and also what type of incidences are occurring, and then we should be able to help and deal with the problem. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you so much for your answering our questions, and also thank you again for your presentation, Rogers. Thank you. I'm looking now at the screen, and I'm seeing some of the attendees answer. Yeah, okay. Yes. I will share also Rogers' presentation, as he also nicely said as well. So yes, but let's look at the slide for a bit. What emerging addiction trends are you most concerned about in your context? And I see some of the things that Rogers have already discussed as well. And I also see that gambling is quite a big one here as well, which leads me perfectly into the next speaker, actually. So we now move from emerging trends in Uganda and East Africa to our next topic, which is behavioral addiction, such as gambling. And to speak on this, we are very pleased to have Merve Karataş here with us today. Merve Karataş is a clinical psychologist with training in EMDR, as well as chemotherapy and cognitive behavioral therapy. And since 2021, she has worked with Green Crescent Counseling Center, providing psychological support for individuals and families affected by alcohol, substance, gambling, internet, and tobacco addiction. Merve, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Olivia. I am sharing my presentation. Can you see my presentation?
Yes. Yes, okay. Perfect.
I am starting. First of all, I would like to say I am very happy to be here today and to have the opportunity to talk about this important topic. My name is Merve Karataş, and I'm a clinical psychologist working at YEDAM, which is the Green Crescent Counseling Center in Turkey. Today, I would like to talk about gambling addiction in Turkey, the support model used at YEDAM, and some findings from our counseling services. I will also briefly explain how we support individuals with gambling addiction at YEDAM. In recent years, gambling addiction has become a growing problem in Turkey. One important reason is the increasing online gambling platforms. Today, gambling is easier to access through mobile phones and digital platforms. We observe that gambling behavior is becoming more common among young adults and is often hidden because of shame and stigma. For this reason, some individuals ask for help very late. Gambling addiction may lead to serious psychological, social, and financial problems, which increase in need for accessible psychological support service. YEDAM provides free psychological support service for individuals struggling with addiction and also their families. The center works in different addiction areas, including substance use, alcohol, tobacco, internet, and gambling addiction. In this presentation, I will briefly explain how we intervene in gambling addiction at YEDAM. First, I would like to talk about individual counseling. In individual counseling session, we assess each client according to their personal risk and needs. Because every individual has a different story, a different motivation, and different triggers related to gambling behavior. The main goals of counseling are to understand the underlying causes of gambling behavior, increase motivation for change, and support long-term recovery. For this reason, we create individual treatment plans. During the first session, we use a detailed assessment in order to better understand the client's gambling history, emotional difficulties, family relationships, financial problems, and motivation for change. At Yadam, we use assessment tools called Kurt and Kurti. During the counseling process, Kurt is used during first assessment, while Kurti is used in follow-up session to monitor the progression of addiction and recovery. We assess areas such as the frequency of gambling behavior, gambling urge, and cravings motivation to quit or reduce gambling, family relationships, psychological well-being, and participation in daily life. For example, we ask questions such as, do you experience a strong urge or desire to gamble? How often do you gamble? Do you think about reducing or stopping gambling? This question help us better understand the client's recovery process and possible relapse risk. During therapy session, we mainly focus on understanding the reasons behind gambling behavior, identifying triggers, challenging false beliefs about gambling, and developing healthier coping skills. We also work on emotional difficulties that might accompany gambling addiction, depression, and anxiety, such as impulsivity, ADHD symptoms, psychological trauma. We provide support for these emotional problems as well. The second area I would like to mention is family support. At Yedam, we believe that addiction affects not only individual but also the entire family system. Therefore, family involvement is an important part of treatment. We organize family counseling sessions to help family members better understand the addiction and learn healthier communication skills. We also work on topics such as money management, family relationships, parenting attitudes, and emotional boundaries. Another intervention method is group therapy. Group therapy gives individuals a safe and supportive environment. Group therapy provides a supportive environment where individuals with similar experience can share their emotions, challenges, and recovery journeys. Many clients experience shame, isolation, and hopelessness. Seeing that they are not alone can increase motivation and reduce feeling loneliness. In group session, we also focus on communication skills, emotional awareness, motivation for change, and relapse prevention. Another important area is social support. Gambling addiction may negatively affect many areas of daily life. Some individuals experience problems in work life, education, friendship, and family relationships. For this reason, social workers support clients in rebuilding daily routines and improving social skills. We also help clients use their free time in healthier and more structured ways. Uh, these workshops include handcrafts, gastronomy, graphic design, sports, and healthy living activities. Another support area is consultation without the individual. Sometimes family members contact the YEDAM even when the individual does not want treatment or support. In this situation, we still provide guidance and emotional support for family members. We also discuss the healthy ways to encourage the individual seek professional help and increase motivation for treatment. I would like to briefly show some examples of handcrafts workshop activities are done. I would like to also briefly mention family group therapy and family psychological support. In family group therapy session, family members can share their experience and better understand the addiction process. We work on communication skills, emotion awareness, responsibility, and money management. This session may also help strengthen family relationships during recovery. In addition, some family members may need psychological support. For this reason, we also provide family psychological support services based on the needs of the family. This session may focus on emotional stress, burnout, anxiety, or family-related difficulties. I would like to briefly mention some of materials we use during the counseling session. One example is the gambling calendar. This materials helps clients monitor how often they gamble and how intense their gambling urges are throughout the week. We also can use this is example. We also use change guides prepared for individuals and family. These guides help clients better understand addiction, recognize developing strategy, risk situation. Finally, I would like to share some brief data from YEDAM. In recent years, we have observed a significant increase in application for gambling counseling service. This may be related to growing accessibility of online gambling and the increasing need for psychological support. We also observe positive change during the follow-up process. After 3 months of support, direct clients who report not gambling increased significantly, while frequent gambling behavior decreased. Although recovery is a long-term process, this finding suggests that psychological support, regular follow-up, and family involvement may positively contribute to recovery. To conclude, gambling addiction is a complex and growing problem that may affect many areas of the individual lives. At YEDAM, we believe that psychological support, family involvement, social support, and regular follow-up are all important parts of recovery process. Although recovery might sometimes be difficult, positive change is possible with the right support and treatment approach. Thank you very much for listening and attention today.
Thank you very much, Merve, for your presentation, and also thank you for giving also a bit more hands-on of also what you do, like in practical terms as well, and not just talk. It's also important to talk about topic, but it's also I think useful as well to share practical ways of doing it as well. So thank you so much for that. I think just to start up the discussions once again, we have a slider question, and the question is because we want to see as well like how our members also work with behavior addiction. So the question that we have in our Slido is, do you include behavior addiction in your current service? And let's see what people say, and let's see how we can start up the discussions. Okay.
We
All right.
focus on behavioral addiction, internet, addiction of the games. I don't remember this name.
Yeah.
And tobacco. These
Mm.
are behavioral addiction for focus on ETYE'den.
Okay. That's good. So we're seeing the poll here is a bit 50-50. People actually do have it included in their current service. So maybe Merve, maybe you could share a bit like how organization can best integrate prevention and treatment work for behavioral addiction in their current service of substance use and prevention treatment. Do you have any tips for organizations to integrate this in their service?
Olivia, can you repeat again? I am so excited. Sorry.
No worries at all. I will repeat again. So, as we can see in the slide, though, there seems to be some of the our members do have behavior addiction included in their service, but some of them don't. So, I just wanted to ask you if you have any tips how to integrate, prevention and treatment for behavior addiction, in the current service of substance use and prevention.
Mhm. Okay, I will. Behavioral addiction can be integrated into exciting substance use services by expanding prevention programs to include topics like digital addiction, gambling, and compulsive behaviors, and by training staff to recognize and address the issues early. It is also important to use holistic approach and provide referrals to approach mental health supported when needed.
Mm.
Some are members already include behavioral addiction in their service, while some do not. So I want. It's okay.
Okay. No, but thank you so much
I'm
for
so
sharing,
long.
Merve. And no, it's really good. And I think something that will be interesting as well something that I think will be interesting. I think the other ones also attending this session will think also exciting. Will be to know from your experience what is like the most common barriers that prevent people from seeking help for behavior addiction, such as gambling. Like, what is the biggest barriers for people to seek help? Or yeah.
The most common barriers are stigma and shame, lack of awareness, that it's a real addiction, fear of judgment, and limited access to special support services. Many people also tend to delay seeking help until the problems become severe. Maybe sometimes it's too late. But main of the stigma and shame.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And also wanted just to touch on that as well. How do you see gender differences are considering in gambling addiction? Like
Maybe.
according to numbers, like is mostly common by males, but is it also how you work with as well with the women as well?
Maybe I can share our presentation part of
Yeah.
this.
Yep.
Can you see?
We can see the yes, we can.
Okay. Male studies show that men are more likely to gamble and develop gambling problems, while women may start later but can progress faster. However, both genders are affected, but at ETYE'den we have more male patients. And also, can you see mean age distribution, education level is this part?
But I think also related to this is the treatment different for women versus men, or is it any differences like how like a gender differences in the treatment?
No, maybe sometimes female we want to focus on stigma in Turkey, but in general the core principles of treatment are same both women and men, such as psychotherapy, CBT, or EMDR. But sometimes focus on stigma, family relationships. Sometimes.
Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Merve, again, for, answering all the questions and also for bringing up your presentations again. It was very insightful. And yeah, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Oliver. I am so excited. Sorry for this.
No, it's good. Thank you very much.
Okay,
So
thank
we
you.
will now, thank you. We will now move on to the final presentation of today's session, which bring us to young people, social media, and substance use disorder. This is highly relevant to emerging trends, of course, as young people environment are now young people's online environment are now part of the wider prevention landscape. Social media can shape perception, influence behavior, expose young people to content that may be normalize and minimize the risk of drugs. And to speak on this today, I would like to introduce Suet Lang from the Singaporean Anti-Narcotics Association, also known as SANA. Suet Lay is a researcher in the Clinic and Research Department of SANA, and she contributes to research projects centered on drug prevention, treatment, and recovery, and supporting SANA's missions to provide impactful programs and service for recovering persons and their family. So over to you.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you,
Thank
everyone,
you.
for joining us. I would first like to extend my gratitude to the World Federation Against Drugs for organizing this training series and for inviting us to contribute. I'm Merve Suet Lay. I'm representing Singapore Anti-Narcotics Association. Today, I'll be sharing insights from our review of the recent literature on social media and its influence on youth drug-taking behavior. First, it's important to note that our goal was to capture a high-level snapshot of the current digital landscape rather than conducting a formal systematic review. So in the interest of time, I'll be focusing on the key findings that carry the most impact. So without further ado, let's begin. Social media holds a critical place in everyday lives of young people, serving as a space for real-time content creation, sharing, and interaction. In fact, data from both the United States and here in Singapore shows that over 90% of young people are using these platforms. It is a space that empowers them to connect with friends, create and share their own content, and access everything from entertainment to vital support networks. Most importantly, social media acts as a formative environment. It isn't just an utility that they use, it's a space where their identities are built and their behaviors are influenced. So why is this review significant? Essentially, we need to understand the how and why behind social media ability to shape young people's attitudes and behaviors, specifically those regarding drug taking. Current research presents us with a dual reality. While these platforms offer vital spaces for social support, they also show a clear association between problematic social media use and substance abuse. Recognizing this influence isn't just an academic exercise, it is critical. So if we don't understand the digital environment our youth are in, we cannot develop the effective prevention strategies needed to protect them. So let's begin on a positive note by looking at how social media serves as a coping tool for well-being. We can categorize these behaviors into two types, reactive and proactive coping. First, reactive coping is about immediate relief. Social media allows youth to engage in cognitive distraction. Simply put, they browse content to decompress or express their emotions through posts and comments. This provides an instant outlet for emotional relief and a sense of community. Second, we have proactive coping. This is more goal-oriented. So here, youth use platforms as a resource for problem solving. They seek out information, they start to build social networks, and also gather practical advice from social media. These connections empower them to tackle challenges head on. So central to both of these is peer validation. So when young people share their stories and receive support online, it diminishes the sense of isolation that often leads to poor mental health. Furthermore, for those in recovery, these digital communities offer accountability. Peer support strengthens their commitment to change and offers a positive framework for transformation. In summary, social media is a power support system. For those of us in the social service sector, it represents a promising avenue to reach when delivering interventions to those in need. So now let's look at the flip side. How does social media act as a stressor? It's not just about being busy online, it's about the psychological weight of it. We're talking about the anxiety of seeking validation, the constant noise of notifications, and the distorted reality of FOMO coupled by misleading or threatening information. Instead of providing a community, these elements actually lead to a sense of isolation and decreased self-acceptance. This isn't just theory. A 2025 Norway study found that for young people between the age of 16 and 21, these digital stressors are gateway to risk. Those who felt overwhelmed by social media were more likely to report drug-related issues. As we look at prevention, we have to recognize that these digital pressures are real, they are heavy, and they are directly influencing substance use patterns. Next, let's look under the hood at the neurological effects. It's important to understand that social media isn't just a distraction. It acts as a reinforcement pathway that closely mimics the effects of addictive substance. These platforms are engineered to trigger the brain's reward system. Every like, comment, and notification initiates a dopamine-driven feedback loop. This is the same biological mechanism activated by addictive drugs, fostering a repetitive cycle of reward-seeking behavior. The data support this. A 2024 US study found a significant link between problematic internet use and increased rates of cannabis and e-cigarette use among young adults. What this suggests is a conditioning effect. By constantly stimulating the brain's rewards center through digital means, we may be making young people more prone to seeking even higher stimulations like illicit drug in the future. This makes the digital habit a critical risk factor we can no longer ignore.
Sorry, your slides didn't move.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We are on the social media as a stressor.
Oh dear. My slides are moving. Okay, let me try to stop sharing and share again.
Yes, that sounds like a good idea.
Okay, do you see slide 6 now? The
Yes.
social media as a driver of pro-drug norms. Okay,
Yes.
let me continue.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry about the technical glitch. Okay, so now let's address how social media reinforce pro-drug norms. This isn't just a few random posts. It's about the very architecture of the platforms. The algorithm we interact with daily are more than just technical innovations. They are active creators of reality. By feeding users content that aligns with their previous clicks, these algorithms create echo chambers. If a young person engages with even a single drug-related post, the system may begin to surround them with similar pro-drug messengers. This is amplified by influencers who glamorize substance use as a lifestyle. Research shows that over 76% of drug-related content presents substances in a positive light. When youth are repeatedly exposed to this glamorized reality, the unacceptable begins to look acceptable and eventually desirable. This normalization is a powerful driver of behavior, and it highlights exactly why we need targeted digital interventions. Social media isn't just a place for social interaction anymore. It has become a digital storefront for drugs. Because platforms offer private messaging and content that disappears after 24 hours, they have become the perfect dark marketplace. In fact, a 2023 study found that more than 1 in 10 posts on these platforms are actually promoting drugs. Think about the impact on youth. UK research found that 29% of students have stumbled across drug apps while just scrolling through the posts on social media. This isn't just about visibility, it's about accessibility. When drugs are marketed like any other consumer goods, the preserved danger drops significantly. We are looking at a digital landscape where the illegal is being presented as the everyday. As we discuss our next steps, I want you to keep in mind that for a young person today, the dealer isn't on a street corner. They are in their pocket, just a click away. Naturally, when we see these risks, our first instinct might be to reach for the off switch. We might think of restriction as the most intuitive solution. However, navigating this challenge requires a much more balanced approach. We have to first acknowledge that the hard truth that total restriction is neither feasible or desirable. Social media isn't just an extra, it is deeply woven into the fabric of young person's life. Consider this. 54% of teens admit they would find it difficult to quit social media entirely. This isn't just about scrolling, it's about their primary social infrastructure. While oversight and governance are necessary, they simply cannot be our only tools. The sheer volume of user-generated content moves faster than any regulator can keep up with. A top-down solution alone will always be one step behind. So if we can't just block it out completely, what can we actually do? So since we cannot simply block the digital world, we must focus on proactive strategies that build resilience from the inside out. First, we must prioritize media literacy. It is no longer enough to tell youth what to avoid. We must equip them with the digital skills to critically evaluate what they see. This means teaching them to deconstruct manipulative messaging and spot drug-related information. Secondly, we need to speak their language through meme-style interventions. Research shows that health messages are most effective when they are engaging and shareable. By using meme formats, we can turn vital information into social currency that young people actually want to pass along. Third, we cannot overlook the power of the home. The parental example is vital. It's about more than just monitoring. It's about parents amplifying healthy digital habits and creating a safe harbor where children feel comfortable discussing their online encounters without fear of judgment. Finally, we should leverage peer-led influence. By training young influencers to champion positive behaviors, we harness the most powerful force in a young person's life, the authentic voice of a peer. These aren't just ideas, they are the foundation of a robust framework designed to protect and empower our young digital citizens. Ultimately, creating safer online spaces is a shared responsibility. We need to empower individuals, including youth, to see themselves not just as users, but as active digital citizens. The goal is a fundamental shift in mindset, moving from passive consumption to becoming the active guardians of our digital world. This starts with cultivating a personal ethic compass, ensuring that every click, every share, and every comment reflects our own value and contributes to a positive culture. A guardian also doesn't just turn a blind eye to harm. When we choose to report content that promotes drug use, we are no longer a bystander. We are an engaged participant protecting the whole community. When we foster this sense of ownership, we create an environment where safety and respect aren't just enforced, they flourish. By embracing this mindset, we empower an entire generation to take control of our digital landscape, building an online world that is responsible, inclusive, and above all, safe for everyone. So to conclude, I'd like to leave you with 3 key takeaways from our review today. First, we must look beyond screen time. It isn't just about how long youth are online, but how they engage. Social media is a double-edged sword. It could be a vital tool for coping and support, or a dangerous stressor that might mimic addictive pathways. Second, we must choose empowerment over simple restrictions. While controls are a piece of the puzzle, strict bans can often backfire. Our most effective defense is building digital resilience. We need to move from policing access to educating literacy, giving youth the strength to navigate content critically. Finally, this is a collective mission. No single organization or policy can solve this alone. We need a whole of society approach involving parents, educators, policymakers, and most importantly, the youth themselves. Creating a safer digital environment is our shared responsibility. Every conversation we start and every skills we teach counts towards a healthier future for our youth. So with that, I've come to the end of my presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to share Sana's review with you today. You can also email us if you have any further questions after this seminar. With that, I'll pass the time back to Olivia.
Thank you so much, and it was very insightful, and I think is always an interesting topic to talk about. Social media, and also especially youth being online, and not just youth, everyone, but as particularly youth. We have one question from the audience from Idrissa. Idrissa from Sierra Leone, and who asked, how do you conduct effective awareness raising in a primary school where pupils are of young age and probably having low knowledge on drug addiction? So I think the question is how we work effectively with awareness with younger youth as well. Oh, I think, sorry, you're muted. Sorry.
Sorry. Okay,
Thank you.
As a researcher, I actually don't practice the prevention side of the interventions. So my thing is for primary school students, it probably we have to break things down into smaller bites for them. Yeah, something that probably relates more to them, like using what they know in their personal life, or in how they interact with other people. So we try to use probably some analogy to make things easier for them to understand, and also like not trying not to scare them, but just trying to explain to them, give them some of the things that the signals that they might have to watch out for if people approach them with things that they say might be fun, interesting to try, but then they should actually go back and ask their parents, have a talk with their parents, and share with them what they heard from others before they actually try to accept what they have been offered. Yeah.
Hey,
No, but thank you.
Perhaps I can just jump in here. So, at Sana, we don't work with young children, so we have limited research into this, but we have come across generally the concern is that because children are of a younger age, so besides what Suet Lay mentioned, to break down into more understandable information, I think there's also studies that show that there's a more concern of exposure for young children. So when you are giving them information, there is concern that we're not done correctly and suitably, children end up becoming exposed and interested. So I think that's a fine line to watch out for. And then even more so for younger children, for the youth, we're already advocating that the families be involved. And so for the primary school age kids, it's definitely we definitely want to engage the families, because the families are where more values and information can come in. So I would encourage that any agency works with the families and not only with the children.
Thank you also for your inputs. No, but this is very interesting as well, and I think it's also an interesting question as well. To also how we, deal with this with also with younger youth as well. We also have prepared a slide of questions for the audience as well, because we want to see how organization if they include risk and opportunities of social media in their awareness raising session and also beyond, and we want to see if it's something people work with. And yeah, and also I just want to share as well in the comments, we also people are thanking you for your presentation, and I think you can also see the comments, but just wanted to raise that. And as well as Ken say, the good insights, especially on ways of reaching out to youth and adolescents and teens to confront substance use in AI areas. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, people have started answering the poll. Let's see. Okay. Mm. Okay, I think there is some mixed answers. Let's give it a few. But either regardless, I think it's interesting as well. Maybe the ones that says no, maybe you have any tips for them how they can include like the risk and opportunities of social media in their awareness sessions. Do you guys have any tips on like a hands-on practical tips how they can integrate it? From a question to Sana. I think you're muted, sorry.
So currently we for current and Hannah's current work, we do have a certain, we work with our national enforcement agency to conduct prevention campaigns in schools. So we do have some content to cover. But besides that, because we do recognize that social media use is we must address, because it is so closely linked with drug use. We do try to slip it in. Yeah. So we haven't had we haven't tried doing it in a big way yet, but we are finding ways to about working with social media, and then basically building digital resilience online.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing as well. Yeah, I think also I mean we have already touched on it a bit already, but I think it's like a question that could be raised again, because I think it's such a difficult question. But when we talk about drug related risk online, how can we talk about them without increasing curiosity, like that we are not intentionally spreading harmful message when we are talking about related risks? If Sana could answer this as well, please.
When we try to actually give the message to our viewers, we probably shouldn't be, we should try to start off with like saying, this is something serious I want to talk to you about, but it's something that you might find it being portrayed interestingly outside, but actually it's not. It's like there's a lot of misinformation out there. So it's not something that if you hear that is actually fun to have or
Yeah.
interesting to
She's
have.
also talking. Yeah, it's a meeting.
So sorry.
Yes.
So I guess the when you have a conversation with youth, we have to be straightforward lah. Like we don't
Yeah.
try to paint different stories and then try to hide things, because youth are not stupid. They know things. They actually read a lot from other places, hear from people. They are exposed, they travel a lot, and they actually see other things out in outside of their social circle or even out of their country. So for that, we have to take the initiative to talk to them, give them the correct information first, and instead of waiting for them to come to us actually, like for when speaking to parents. So for parents, probably you are the closest to your children. So you are probably the first line of defense for any children to be like corrupted by this information that's lying around. So parents should proactively talk to the children, find out from them what they learn, what have they heard from other people, and try to correct all this misinformation they have been receiving. Yeah, so probably that's like the best advice that I have for any parents, or any concerned adults with any youth or like social service or social workers who contact in touch with youth that you think that they might be like going into this danger zone where they are actually getting close to drugs or getting information about drugs that they are not supposed to be, or learning things that are not so that correct. But we'll try to address it before anything happens. Yeah. Correct.
Thank you. And thank you so much for your presentation. It was super insightful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So because today's speakers has been having such a comprehensive presentation in their given time, we are able to finish a bit earlier. But I want to thank everyone, like our speakers again, and I also want to thank our attendees as well for joining today's sessions. And that's just to close up what we have discussed today. I just want to share that we have, talked about changing addiction trends in Uganda and East Africa. We have also talked about the growing importance of understanding and responding to behavioral addiction, as well as the influence of social media on young people's perception and behavior. Another thing that was also very interesting is one of the takeaways is from the slide that we share is that while some of our attendees point out specific drugs that they are concerned about, most of them actually are concerned related to the online behavior and the digital environments, which includes gambling, social media, misinformation, and the normalization of harmful behaviors. And I think this reminds us that while it's important to stay informed about emerging substance, one of the biggest challenges is to work with these digital developments and to work together, not only to inform, but also to provide treatment and recovery service. And I just hope that everyone has enjoyed today's sessions and also think that it has been insightful, because I think it's been very insightful. I also want to remind everyone to register for our final session, which is next week, session 5, and the final one, and that's on Wednesday, the 27th of May, and it's going to be on strengthening organizational advocacy capacity. And this specific presentation will be quite unique because it will be an interactive session led by Mike Denvier from Movendi International. And he will give practical and hands-on exercises that you will gain deeper understanding of advocacy methodology, and also how your organization can strengthen the ability for advocacy. We will also share the link to register for session 5 now in the chat as well, so you guys have it as well. But yeah, once again, thank you again, thank you for our attendees, and also, of course, thank you for all the speakers. It was lovely to have you all, and I wish everyone a continue great day. Thank you,
Thank you
and
so
bye
much,
bye.
Olivia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.